I can see you, Kirk.
Chang.
Can you see me?
Con bloodsucker. You're gonna do your own dirty work now. Do you hear me? Do you?
Set a course. For home.
I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. Shield inside all ships. Resistance is futile.
Good evening, good evening. And welcome to another episode of the Trek Brothers podcast. I'm Chris.
I'm Shaun.
Hey, Shaun, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm alright. We're in Colorado, so woo! Snowy time.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that anymore.
You're like in the desert, huh?
Yeah, I didn't wear a jacket this afternoon, so...
Oh no, see what that's like? It's like you're in the movie Flight of the Phoenix, like, all the time, where the guy's like, I'm gonna walk to get help, and they're like, this is the worst desert in the world.
No, it's not like that, because I don't live in the desert, I live on the coast, so...
Oh yeah, you got that nice breeze coming in.
Yeah.
Well, we got a good show, right? We have a good show today. We have, we could liken this, I guess, to the best writing ever in Star Trek.
Oh my.
Keep the dog off your lawn.
My God, it's so beautiful. All right, let's get to the news.
All hands, brace for impact.
Engage.
I apologize for nothing. So, back in the day, one of the writers of Star Trek Into Darkness, last week we said this, we talked about J.J. Abrams regretting that they borrowed a lot from The Wrath of Khan. Well, today, Damon Lindelof, a writer of Star Trek Into Darkness, said that holding on to the information that Khan was the villain was one of the big mistakes. So I'm just really curious, like, what next week's mistake is going to be. What do you think?
Yeah, we're apparently just on an apology tour of this movie. Who knows what we're going to hear about next.
Oh man, can you imagine George Lucas going on an apology tour?
No, he didn't apologize for anything.
George
They're like,
Lucas
sorry.
is the ultimate hedonism bot. That's how JJ
Yeah.
needs to be.
Yeah, he does. Like, what do you? So, what does this mean? Does that mean that J.J. Abrams in another few years is just going to go back into darkness and just completely change it, take out Khan references,
Oh man.
take out the reveal that he was? What was his code name or his pseudonym? Benjamin Harris, was that it?
Yeah. Harrison.
Oh, Harrison. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you don't hear. I'm not gonna spoil today's episode for you, but you don't hear Ira Stephen Bear saying this. I apologize for nothing. So anyway, yeah, I'm not really sure that I like that they apologize on a weekly basis for something different from those movies.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so far gone now. I mean, these apologies, if they happened at all, should have came 2 years ago. More than 2 years ago. It should have came when the movie came out, and they were like, oh, wait. So why is it taking so long for them to come out and say, oh, no, yeah, we made a mistake?
Time after time. It's like that song. It's, with Cher. If I could take back everything I'd have hurt you, I'd say, I don't know why I put Khan in the movie. I don't know why you could see into the bridge.
I've said this before. Like, I don't mind that they did Khan. That's fine. That seems about right that they would add Khan into the second movie, into Darkness. But I don't know why they had to make it so parallel to the Wrath of Khan. I don't get it.
I'm right on the same page. It is. Oh, it bears repeating. It is just that movie, just repeated.
If they were going to do something that paralleled the old show or the movies, like, they should have just picked, and this ruins it now, because if the third movie parallels an episode, I'm going to be so disappointed because we already got one of those. So if we only have 3 movies, I'm fine with one of them paralleling an episode. That's fine. But 2 of them is much. And the one chance that they did take on it, they screwed up. And now they know they screwed up, apparently.
It's in the news. They know they screwed up.
Disappointment all around the table.
You need to destroy every copy of it, like Lucas did of the Star Wars Christmas Holiday Special. Destroy it all! Destroy it all!
It's not that bad.
That's true. I got to give them their due.
That's rough. The holiday special.
B. Arthur's in there.
Oh my god!
It's like the Golden Girls, where she's just in the cantina. We don't serve your kind here, and like Betty White walks in. Okay, there's more Star Trek news.
Okay.
This is wonderful. This is great. Maybe you know what I should do? Kind of cheat here and move up my little STO talk right here, because my STO talk is also kind of this breaking news here. I'm going to do that, and then you could go ahead and take charge later in the show, and I won't do my STO, but I'll do my STO bit right here, because this is the news.
All right.
So tomorrow, beginning in STO, is the winter event. Every year it's new, and by new I mean you get a new prize. It's always the same, however, like maps and events and stuff like you have to do. So do you know anything about this, Shaun? Have you read up on the winter event? Because it can blow your mind.
What I do know about the Stowe event, I've seen a couple pictures. It's a winter wonderland within the Q continuum, but I can't really give you any details other than that.
Oh man, it totally is. You fight gingerbread guys. You fight that weird Yeti beast from that cartoon. He's in there. Oh, it's so wonderful. There's Christmas ornaments that you can throw as weapons. You have like snow guns, like snowball weapons, different types of snowball weapons. You also have these boots that you could slide around on like you're on ice. Like, that's just like the gear we're talking about right now. The events for itself are pretty exciting too. I hope Shaun gets excited about this and decides to get into Stowe. But there's skating, ice skating rink that you can go on, and then in order to get the big news though, every year, like I said, there's like a new prize. You have to collect these Q Continuum little pictures, and in order to do that, you have to go around like this little ice track that you race a little brain on. And I have to say, this ship that they're coming out with tomorrow that you can get for free, it's called the Brain Resrith Dreadnought Cruiser. I have to say, this is the most awesome looking ship ever that I've ever seen. Like, I want this ship. And I guess the irony in that is it's like a brain ship from, the brain being from DS9. But anyway, it looks damn awesome, I have to say. Don't you think it looks cool?
Well, I actually haven't seen the brain ship.
Oh, man. This little tear just came out of my eye. And what's great, like, it has this console, too. See, now I'm just going to get into Star Trek Online. It has this console that will give you a passive bonus to all your power levels. And you want that EPS flow system for some really good DPS. So I imagine this ship's going to be real good. If you could get your power levels over 75, you have a pretty good warp core chance of getting 3.3% per all 4 power levels being over 75%. So if you can maintain that, you're dealing at least 12 extra percentage. It's pretty good. Oh, man. I'm excited. Yeah, and like there's this one event, and you do different events. There's an event where, like I said, this giant snowman appears on the skating rink. There's also this other event where you have to go out and kind of like find puzzles and defeat like little mini snowmen. And then there's also this other event where you team up with I think it's about 20 people, and you have to fight this snowman invasion. And on top of that, you could also collect recipes that you can turn into Neelix and pie eating contests and stuff. This event, the winter event, every year, this event this year that's happening tomorrow is like one of the funnest things that happens in Stowe.
Really?
Yeah, it truly is fun.
Is it like, I mean, does it go on for a couple weeks or days, or is it just tomorrow?
Oh, it goes on months. It goes on winter. Okay. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Let me. I'm on Trendy's page right here. Laughing Trendy is the CM community moderator. She posts everything that's coming up, and I'm looking at Gorgonzola's. He's also Gorgonzola. I have to pronounce that. He's a developer too, and he posts on this. And I'm trying to see, to answer your question, I don't see when it ends. I'm imagining like in the first or second week of January. And you have to keep in mind, if you play this, starting tomorrow, of course, you have to get 1,000 of these prize vouchers that you get for completing that little race that I was talking about. But every time you do it, you can only do it within a 20-hour period once, and every time you do it, you only get 40 pictures. So you got to be dedicated to get that 1,000. That's out there. And I'm kind of hoping, here we go, Chris making some enemies. I'm kind of hoping that we get some lag or something going on, or some disconnects, because they always pretty good. Cryptic is pretty good about extending these kind of events, the summer event and the winter events, whenever something kind of bad happens to the servers. So I'm hoping it goes on quite a while, because I do love this. There's some accolades too. There's accolades for eating different kinds of food, for making different kinds of foods, and I mean, you can just tell I'm really excited. Like, there's so much to do in this. Okay, man, I've rambled on a lot. That's
exciting. No, that's a lot for somebody that's never played the game. That there's a crazy amount going on.
Yeah, and it's all in keys. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. And it's all in Q Wonderland. Yeah, man, you got to do this. Are you going to do it tomorrow?
Probably not tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. I guess the whole the beginning part of this podcast, like of us doing this podcast, I think is going to be you trying to get me onto a Stowe.
I'll do it.
We'll see how many episodes it takes before I actually join. So we're four. Well, we will be 4 down after tonight. So we'll see. See how long it takes.
See, we got to be like we got to be in that dark alley and like this. Yo, friend, hey, I got something for you to try over here. It's pretty good. It's called Stowe, and then you're just hooked. Like, it's legal over here. Stowe's legal in Colorado. Terrible.
I'm afraid RoboCop's going to come and find me and step on my little Stowe vials. And
yeah, hit that. Oh, this is great too. So every winter you get different clothes too, and I don't know if they're going to change it up this year, but you could get a Santa suit, like get the Santa hat and the Santa coat and all that. I talked about the gloves and stuff. Like, you could deck yourself out in a Santa suit. Like, there's even a scarf. It's pretty in depth of what you could do looking like in the cold. And what's always fantastic is somebody's always genius enough to make a Santa character. So, like, you'll just be, like, doing your thing, and then you'll look and you're like, oh my gosh, it's Santa. It's pretty sweet.
That sounds all right.
Oh, man. Tomorrow. All right. I've gone on long enough. I could go on forever. Any other news, Shaun? Got anything?
I don't have any real news. We're recording this on the anniversary of the debut of Friday's Child. So that came out, I think, 49 years ago.
All right. Let's get to verdict time.
Consider your verdict.
All right, Shaun.
All right, so I'm on the negative week again, and I'm going to apologize because we already talked bad about Into Darkness this episode. We talked bad about it last episode. 2 episodes ago, when it was the last time I had my negative verdict, I singled out a scene in Into Darkness. And, well, here we go again.
Depth at 4,500 feet, 4,800, 5,000, 5,000 feet.
Dear Lord, that's over 150 atmospheres of pressure. How many atmospheres can the ship withstand? Well, it's a spaceship, so I'd say anywhere between 0 and 1.
Okay. So, if you don't know where I'm going with this, you haven't seen the movie. The beginning of Into Darkness, we talked about it last week. Why is the spaceship underwater? Why is it hiding underwater? They have transporter abilities. You've seen them. You saw them in the first episode of Star Trek. You saw them in the rejected pilot that happened 2 years before the first episode of Star Trek. There's no reason to hide the ship underneath the planet's surface in the water, in the ocean. That makes zero sense in itself. Why were they down there? They have transportation technology. The whole point of that is so you don't have to put the ship down week after week or movie after movie.
Oh, it's so bad. And that clip is so great. That episode's funny. Yeah. But you know, getting into physics, you know, like the lunar excursion model, the lunar excursion module on the Apollo missions. Parts of that is like aluminum foil. That's how thick that is because it's a vacuum. It's space. So when you look at like a starship like the Enterprise, like that can literally, like the outside of it could just be made out of aluminum foil. And it just be just fine because it's in space. Now, given the physics of that concept, one would have to think that once the ship, just like Dr. Farnsworth is talking about, is underwater, it would just collapse the ship. Because you're suddenly going from like 0 psi to like millions of psi. Probably thousands of psi. I don't know how much. Like I said, I'm not a physics person, but, you know, it's going to crush your ship.
See, and neither am I. Like, I don't remember very much of physics, and what I did learn mostly came from high school, so it's extremely rudimentary. But so the Enterprise itself is somewhere in the neighborhood of 240 feet tall, I believe, from the top of the bridge, or in this case, I guess the nacelles might be a little bit taller, to the bottom of the lowest part of the secondary hull, somewhere around 240 feet. We'll just call it 240 feet. So that ends up, say that the bridge, the very top bubble, is at the surface of the ocean, and the atmosphere is similar to Earth, which there's no reason not to believe that it's similar to Earth on this planet. That's 7 atmospheres of pressure that is on the bottom of the Enterprise. And that's assuming that they're at the surface, which we both know that they're not at the surface because it shows that the ship is rather far down. So just to think that Spock or not Spock, but Kirk and McCoy can swim down there in just their normal human bodies, first of all, ridiculous, because they go in the bottom part of the ship. They go in near engineering section. Second of all, why would the ship, you know, maybe there's some justification that they can have shields or there's something to do with the deflector, but then, you know, you'd think Spock and McCoy probably wouldn't be able to penetrate that if that's holding all the pressure at bay. It just, you know, you make a sub, like a submarine, you want the pressure on the inside pushing out so it doesn't collapse the vessel. And a spaceship operates in almost the exact opposite way as far as pressure. You got to have pressure inside pushing outward so it maintains a stable atmosphere. So to reverse them seems quite the scientific feat. I mean, beyond suspension of disbelief. I don't care what kind of technologies you have. I feel like even if the technology were there, it's completely useless, because why would you want a ship that can both go underneath the water, deep into the sea, and then way out into space?
Yeah, what is the purpose of that?
Add an element of suspense or adventure at the very beginning, but it makes me mad. And I know they kind of say, oh, well, you know, at the very beginning, like when they enter the airlock, Scotty is complaining about the salt water rusting.
Oh, God.
I feel like that's the least of their concerns. Like, I feel like there'd just be I mean, we've learned that Data can't even go in the water without getting, having to be aired out for a week or whatever they say in Insurrection or
My
whenever
butt's
it
a
is.
flotation device. You don't see him rusting up.
I don't know. I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't like it. It doesn't so the first time I sat down to watch Into Darkness, we're going along. The movie's going along. This is 5 minutes into the movie, maybe 10 at the most, that you see the Enterprise underwater. As soon as I saw that, ruined the entire beginning for me. That part right there, I went, I hate this beginning. And the first time I saw it all the way through, I was like, okay, that's all right. I'm okay with this movie, except for that beginning. If it weren't for that intro, I'd like this movie. Of course, I watched the movie a few other times after that and started picking it apart and going, this is actually very good. I think the first time I saw it, I was just excited. You're just excited. You're in the theater, new Star Trek. You kind of tend to overlook some of the kind of more nitpicky things that you're going to dislike later. But that was one thing that I couldn't let go, and I still don't let go. It's literally one of the worst things I feel like in the entire franchise. And maybe you think that that's nitpicky, or people out there might think that that's nitpicky of me, but it's just so absurd to me that, I mean, it's so absurd that Futurama made a joke about it before that scene was even conceived of.
That's how smart that show is. That show's very smart when it comes to science. But, I don't like... Too far off topic, but I don't really like Scotty in Into Darkness. And this scene illustrates one of the reasons why I don't like Scotty in Into Darkness. Is they steal so much characterization and explode it from what they were on the TV shows. And... to me, that's just like lazy writing and reminiscent of that scene of when Scotty's like, I know the ship, like the back of my hand. And then like he hits his forehead on a pipe or something. Scotty's always like that. Or like in that scene that we covered a couple weeks ago when we had that joke where he's like, it fits like a glove, Captain. And the damn thing just like falls through this hole. Like that's just like the kind of comedy that he is. And for some reason when Simon Pegg does it, it just like, oh my God. Like to me it feels so forced. And this is one of those scenes where it's gonna rust. It's just like, Scotty wouldn't be like that. Like, fix it, Scotty. Yeah. You're the engineer. You're the miracle worker.
I agree with you. And I'm not the biggest Simon Pegg fan as Scotty. I really like Simon Pegg, actually. But in these movies, I don't like him. I don't know who they could have found that was better, but I think he works to a degree. I think Scotty's just kind of flawed in the movies. I think I don't know. I don't like the way they've done him. I don't think it's necessarily Simon Pegg's fault. I think it's more the writer's fault than anything else.
And the windows, it has windows. Okay, so when you have a submersible go down to like Titanic and stuff, and those documentaries that you see with Dr. Robert D. Ballard, he's talking about the pressure outside, and the windows have to actually be like curved and stuff like this to displace the pressure and stuff. And the first thing that comes to my mind when talking about like the windows is you have one gigantic window into the bridge that's exposed, that's taking all that pressure, and I just imagine it just like exploding and killing Sulu and Chekhov like right away. Because you shouldn't have a window that big that can be able to withstand that pressure. It's physics and science tell us this is the worst scene ever.
The bridge window wouldn't be a problem if they just did the bridge right and made the view screen not a window and an actual screen.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue. We could bring that up though, because you can't really have that on a clip because it's so visual. But yeah,
we complained about that last week too.
that damn window is very distracting. It's very distracting to me.
Yeah. One thing I've learned in the month that we've been doing is that we're going to apparently repeat ourselves every now and then, and we're also going to just talk a lot of crap about In Darkness.
And you think, I know this from study of Ben Franklin. I know this because I went to middle school. The ocean has a lot of currents, so I don't know how much energy it would take to keep something the size of the Enterprise from like toppling over from currents, but there has to be currents, undersea currents, on this planet. Like if you have any sort of gravity, and by this I mean any sort of gravity, I mean like every damn planet in the universe has gravity when it's spinning, so you're gonna have ocean currents. And I just can't imagine how much energy it's going to take from keeping the Enterprise from, like, toppling over. And it just does not make sense.
No, not to mention when you're going into space, you don't have to think once you're out of the atmosphere. You don't have to think about, stuff like drag or, gravity pulling on you like that. I guess if you were to go into orbit, you would, obviously, if you're going to spin around the moon and come back to the Earth and stuff like that. But if you're underneath the water, you have so much drag on you to get out of the water as a spaceship. It's just so impractical. It's extremely unbelievable.
Starship flies so fast away from the ocean. It's amazing that those little alien dudes have time to discern what the Enterprise looked like. Now I'm nitpicking. That's and there's also I don't know about mechanical gods and stuff. I don't know. I might give that a pass because I think maybe that isn't giving enough credit to human evolution, because I don't think necessarily, even going as far back as like the Greeks and stuff, like they saw thunder and lightning, and I don't think they were insane about, a god creating it. They might have been like, oh, that's just the gods kind of upset. But for me, like, this stinks of like an entire religion being born on the Enterprise. Like, the guy throws away the idol that Kirk had stolen, like, just throws it, just drops it away, and suddenly like the Enterprise becomes a god. That's a little weird to me, and I don't think that it would be that euphoric in real life, because I don't think that's how it actually occurred in our evolution. But I could be wrong. If you're a cultural anthropologist out there, write into the show and tell me I'm wrong.
God, we could go on from there about how much the Prime Directive is ruined there. Like, I understand that that's a little bit of a plot point, and that's how they get Pike kind of back into the movie, but like, I just feel like, that's so obscene and so wrong that even if it was before the Prime Directive was really fleshed out, like in the original series in the 60s, like, that's something that you just ultimately get court-martialed for and put in the brig for, like, ever and ever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's that episode where Kirk has to go on trial and stuff, and the Prime Directive is pretty important, and once again, here's an example of them exploding a character trait of Kirk from the early episodes, where he'll break the Prime Directive, and they make it like so huge in this movie, and I don't like that. Kirk is still principled. That stinks of a person not knowing Trek very much, because when I think of Kirk, maybe I should say it stinks of not being Christopher Vera, because when I think of Kirk, he is perhaps only on par with Picard as being very dedicated to the principles of the Federation. He is very duty-bound. I imagine Picard being more flexible in situations like that. And Kirk, to me, is a man of principle. And to just flagrantly say, like, oh, he's just this kid who's, I'm going to do this crazy thing in the volcano to save this species, go underwater, and, this convoluted plan, really. I don't see it. I don't see Kirk being that career throwaway away, to make up a word.
Right. And it's all for the setup of, like, oh, I did it for my friend.
That's
who would
it.
do the same for me.
Yep, that's the only point. That's the point of, like, the first 30 minutes of Into Darkness. And it doesn't even resonate well, I think, because Abrams tries to be, like, genius about it, to bring it around to the end, to kind of flip their roles, with Spock trying to save Kirk and Kirk dying. That whole it makes it so much less impactful, in my opinion, to recall it like that.
Yeah, I know. I agree. It's there to set up the climax, but it's a really poor way of setting up the climax. It doesn't. You're right. It doesn't resonate. Like, you almost forget about it. The only reason I actually remembered it right now is because we're talking about it so in depth, and I think this is probably the most I've ever thought about it.
It's a very important thing to talk about, because this is the future of Trek. This came out a little bit before we started the podcast, so we weren't able to include this in the news or anything. But about a week before is when the news broke that there was going to be a new Star Trek series. And I can't remember who wrote the article. I want to say it was Slate or somebody. It might have been BuzzFeed or something, but the person who wrote the article lamented the fact that the new series isn't going to include anything from the new movies. And, we could talk about copyright and stuff like that. But to me, I've never met... that it was such a weird opinion to me, because it's fair to say that I've never met a single person that's been like, this is the best Trek ever. Star Trek 2, bad. Into Darkness, great.
Anybody that, I don't know, maybe there were people, maybe this movie got somebody really into Star Trek. Maybe this movie, there were people in its audience, they loved it, they fell in love with Star Trek, and they always drop back to this movie. I don't know any of those people, but I guess it's possible.
They like boring is who likes this. Or I shouldn't say boring. They like the opposite of boring. They like in-your-face action, explosions, and fast-paced, and the whole movie going at, 99 miles an hour kind of thing. Like, the scene... I'll just pick one scene. Like when Christian Slater's character shows up in Sulu's quarters, and there's not much that happens in that scene other than him being like, Starfleet wants us to report in, and Sulu's like, do you have a hearing problem? It's like such a simple, nothing but dialogue, but it says so much. And I think you can't have that kind of scene. And you could pick any scene like in Star Trek 1 through 6 or 8, 7, 8, 9. You could pick anything like that, and you're not going to have that kind of slow thing anymore. Right.
No, you're not. There's not a whole lot of just talking and dialogue and anything like that. I guess maybe a little bit, but not anywhere like that. It is all very much, fly as fast as you can, go as quick as you can, and they were made like that on purpose. That when they sat down, I think, to make these movies, they're like, well, we need to make Star Trek popular for everybody, and so they made these movies with that intent. So I think that's by design that they're like that. But I also think it's unfortunate that they had to design them like that.
It's just bad.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
In that vein, it makes me really nervous for this third one, because it's Jeremy Lin who's directing it, and the guy who's done the past 2 or 3 Fast and Furious movies. And don't get me wrong, the Fast and Furious movies, the newer ones, I think they're good for what they set out to do. And they set out to be that. They set out to be this over-the-top, ridiculous, crazy action movie. And the newer Fast and Furious movies work better than the first Fast and Furious movies, because they realize, like, let's just go for it and just do, cars going out of skyscrapers into other skyscrapers, just nonsensical, over the top stuff. And that's what we're going to make these movies. I think that's already been applied a little bit to Star Trek. And I think with him behind the director's chair, they're going to take it even further, because he knows how to do that. He knows how to make it successful. And that's not what Star Trek is. And that's not okay to do that with Star Trek. And when there's a TV show, inevitably in a little over a year, it's not going to be the same, because it's going to be a TV show. So there's no way that it's going to be able to keep that kind of heart-pumping, nonstop action in that format. There's going to be a weird disconnect in between, this modern 2009 Into Darkness, Beyond set of movies and what the newest television show is going to be. And I think it's going to be really weird for newer fans.
But just as weird for old fans, I think. We long for the day of Kirk. That's, we can laugh and talk about the way that Shatner portrayed Kirk, kind of that caricature kind of way, and unarguably everybody did that in the original Trek, but those characters meant something. And not just like, them being in action and stuff like that, or Kirk fighting a Gorn and stuff like that. They actually created this kind of catharsis that you cared about what happened to these characters. In these new movies, I don't care what happens to Spock. Spock could have died, and I'd just been like, okay. Kirk did die. Dang it. Kirk died, and I was just like, all right. That's
Yeah,
it.
you don't think anything about it.
No, and it's because, fine, Christopher Pine's a good actor, whatever, I'll give him his due, but, the writing and the directing just hasn't generated enough for me to care about these characters, and I imagine it's going to be like this for the television show, this new series. If it goes the direction of that fast pace that we were talking about, I'm just not going to care about them. Does anybody sit down and say that they really, oh my gosh, is it The Rock that's in Too Fast, Too Furious?
Yeah, well, in the modern ones, yeah.
Yeah. Nobody, sits down and is like, that's, the greatest character ever written in the history of film. He's better than, Atticus and, all this stuff. And I don't see that happening, or Citizen Kane or something like that, where, you have these memorable characters that you really care about what happens to them.
Oh, yeah, I hope people don't do that. I hope that's not a comparison anyone's ever made.
And the Starship. Okay, let's talk about the Starship. Man, this is a good tangent. We talk about the Starship going under ocean and stuff, and it doesn't create really a sense of dread that the Enterprise is going to implode or anything like that. I know this is an inanimate object, but when Kirk blows up the Enterprise, you feel that sense of loss. It's just so impactful, and then the only words that Kirk has are just, "My God, Bones, what have I done?" And it is just an amazing scene, and it's a piece of machinery. He killed the Enterprise. It's so insane. And so, my point is, when Kirk in Into Darkness risks the Enterprise, it's like he doesn't care about it. I know it's an inanimate object, and it's fine to say, he cares about his crew, and he should rightly care about his crew more than a piece of machinery. But it doesn't have that love and connection of what the Enterprise has done and can do.
Right. No, they never establish, and we've talked about this a couple times too. The new movies do not establish the Enterprise as a character, albeit an inanimate character, but a character nonetheless. It doesn't establish that in any reasonable way whatsoever.
I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like where it's going.
I don't like it. Maybe someday we'll have a choose your verdict where me and you actually disagree.
Maybe. And I think oh man, we could go on forever. Because I really don't think it's going to be like that for the Millennium Falcon either. I mean, you see the Falcon, in Empire Strikes Back, the thing's, broken down. You're, on the edge of your seat, wondering if whether or not the hyperdrive is going to work for Han Solo. It's just really edge of your seat. Irvin Kershner and George Lucas created a character out of that ship, out of the Millennium Falcon. It's a character in Empire Strikes Back, undoubtedly. It's a character that doesn't, work. But it's a character. And so you care about those types of things. And in the new movies, I guarantee you it's not. It's just going to be there's the nostalgia Falcon, and look, it has a deflector dish that got broken off in the Death Star and replaced. That's all it's going to be. And I'm pretty sure that I bet money that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Like I said, I'm at a loss of words for the new Star Trek or the new Star Wars movie. Like I said, in my mind, we've already seen Star Wars at its worst, so I don't think this is going to be any worse than, say, Episode 2.
Yeah, that's true.
Because to me, that's Star Wars about at its worst is Episode 2.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
I could always be disappointed. I guess more so. Of course, the new Star Trek movie could always be good. I could always be impressed, too.
It's working! It's working! That's a really nerdy reference. Alright, I'm going to move on. Man, we could...
Okay.
We need a... Here's what we'll do. I'm going to make a promise right here. And Shaun could disagree all he wants, but we're going to do this. We're going to make an episode where we just have a discussion of the movies at some point. And we'll probably have to break up the movies into sections, like Into Darkness Part 1 kind of thing. But yeah, we should talk about these movies in their entirety at some point as well. What the heck was I going to say? Oh yeah. So here's mine. So here's something I really love in Star Trek. I love composers a lot, not just in Star Trek, but across the board, Star Wars, anything. I like composers. And the late James Horner just died this year, and was one of the greatest composers ever for film, and a fantastic composer when it came to The Wrath of Khan, unarguably the best Star Trek movie ever. And he kind of getting into music stuff. This is Shaun's realm of the knowledge, of course, in the music thing. But I'm going to talk a little bit about it. One of the things that I like and sort of dislike to a little extent about James Horner, but not enough to be like, boo, James Horner, is he's not a thematic composer per se. So a good example is Titanic, where like he writes for the scenes. As opposed to writing a theme progression to say, like, the ship has, every time you see Titanic, it's going to be the exact same kind of notes that you hear. Another, like, the best example is probably John Williams, where, every time you hear dun, 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 you're going to see Darth Vader. So what's really interesting about that is I actually found this on YouTube, and it sort of destroys that impression of James Horner, but in an interesting way, because James Horner doesn't use the word theme in this. He kind of steps a little back in this little clip that I'm going to play for you, and instead he calls it a motif. And so it's really interesting, but I think you can argue that it's a theme. And I never thought about like the Wrath of Khan like that, because I've always thought of just like he wrote for the scene. But I really like this clip that I'm gonna play for you now.
Seafaring, as I told you, so they didn't want to reuse or reference anything of Star Trek 1. That was history now. So we had to come up with a new theme, and it had to be very musical and had to be memorable. I believe that you had to have 2, maybe maximum 3 themes that an audience could keep track of. And then it was important that 3 themes be your principal themes, and then have maybe a motif or 2 that were very short but narrated other things. And themes tended to be long melodies, and the motifs could be short blasts of things. Khan didn't have a long theme. Khan had a high sort of warlike thing that I did in the high French horns, which was da 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 da, and it's very short, and it's accompanied with this sort of percussion da 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 sort of figure. But it helps you know right away that that's Khan's music, and it's very short and distinctive. And that plays against the theme of the Enterprise, which is a long melodic thing. I wanted it to be really something that was strong and warlike, and to me, the high horns, in terms of color, did that. Not the trumpets, but in terms of sheer power, I think it was 8 French horns did that. It was something that I could play that was a short blast of power. It wasn't really a theme, it was just sort of a motif for Khan. And then I could do that, and then when you cut back to Kirk, you could have Kirk's theme very simply dun 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 bum dun, and it was that motif, and then you could cut away so that these chases could be very easily theme driven, because there was a lot of battle music, and it was incessant, and I had to find a way to musically say who was what and what was who and who was damaged, who was not damaged. And that helped a great deal knowing how the battle was going. And I think that is really, really important when you are having long battle sequences. Otherwise, it's just action music.
Fire. Fire.
Oh, I love that. I love composers talking about music. And like I love when they like sing their own songs and stuff. But here once again, I'm gonna draw from this that I absolutely love this. I absolutely love James Horner. And he mentions a few things that I have against Star Trek Into Darkness. The first, he talked about the Enterprise having a theme. I don't think the Enterprise does have a theme. Like, there's that weird enterprising young man that is in the film, do. But it's like nothing like to think of the Enterprise as like a ship of exploration, and James Horner talking about it like these long kind of melodies. That's really impressive to me. That's lacking in the new film, and then also that I think is just brilliant is he. And maybe this is more Nicholas Meyer than it is James Horner. Nicholas Meyer telling James Horner to think about this, but like the Enterprise in Wrath of Khan like fires like one torpedo, and Kirk fires like once, and then Khan fires and misses. But the thing is like it's a slow battle. But, like, each weapon fire means something. And that's kind of what James Horner's talking about, how, like, you have to think about the dynamics of the battle and stuff. And then when you fast forward to, like, Into Darkness, like, yeah, you have, like, fast-paced music and stuff. But it's, like, to fit a scene where it's just, like, random fireballs just going all over the damn screen.
Right. So... Okay, I guess I have a few things to go over. So, you're right. And I like the way that James Horner described there's no central Kirk theme. There's no central Khan theme. It's not like every time you see Khan, you hear the high French horns, or every time you see Kirk, you hear the da 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 da. It kind of gets intertwined between the two of them, and he does it in such a way that going back and forth during the fighting, it works really well. And I mean, Star Trek II has one of my favorite film scores ever. I mean, it might be one of my favorites. But the way that he jumped between the characters like that, and yet still have it kind of, promote the action that's happening on screen is amazing. The way that the battle of in the Mutara Nebula starts and gets ramped up is amazing too in Star Trek 2. It's one of my favorite scenes, and the reason it works is because of the music, and to just jog your memory. The way it starts is when they're all in the Genesis cave together, and Kirk pulls out the communicator and signals to Spock and says, it's been 2 hours. Where are we at? And then the music starts, and it just starts with this little tiny, just like da 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 da. Like, and you just get going from there, because at that point in time you didn't know that they weren't stranded on the planet. They've played it off. You heard Kirk yell out Khan at the top of his lungs, like you thought that they were just doomed. You didn't know how Kirk was going to get out of it, and I don't think anybody ever expected him to just pull out a communicator and say, hey, you ready to pick us up? And then Spock returns saying, yeah, we can do that. And it's amazing. And it starts this wonderful scene where they go back to the Enterprise, and it ramps up where they get like their damage report, and they're making their way back to the bridge, and they have to crawl through the Jeffries tubes and everything else like that. And oddly enough, as a side note, James Horner makes a cameo in that scene. In one of the corridors, he has a little baby cameo where he walks down a corridor for all of a second of screen time or something like that. Just amazing film composer. I mean, Titanic proved that. He won so many awards for that. And obviously that's probably what he's most famous for, is Titanic. But one thing that people know Titanic for, amongst plenty of other things, is the music. Whether or not they know James Horner, they definitely know music from Titanic. But he, in my opinion, outdid himself. 15 years before that was Star Trek II.
Yes. And you talk about during the battle, like I was saying earlier, again, you feel something for Kirk. He's in a situation where you empathize completely with his plight, and you're on the edge of your seat not knowing how he's going to handle the situation. He's like that too when he's on the bridge of the Enterprise and he's trying to trick Khan. It's that peril that's really well established in that movie, like played out very well. A lot of that has to do with the acting ability of William Shatner. I think he played it amazing. And once again, that's just gone into darkness. I don't really, I don't know. Maybe, Spock is, maybe I'm not giving him his due, but, he's in that volcano. I'm just like, watch the volcano kill him. And I just don't, even care. Don't care about them. And part of that is the music. I don't think that's, I don't know. You gave Giacomo a pretty good review, but, a lot of that music I think is just kind of hype, but hype because it has to fit such a fast pace. And how can you convey emotion in just doing da 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 all the time?
Yeah, well, there's no emotion to convey, so what's he going to do? He has to write the music for the scenes that he's given, and I think it's one thing to be able to write fast-paced music the entire movie all the way through, but it's a whole nother to actually be able to. And Star Trek II is very much character-driven, heavily character-driven. There's not a lot of action in that movie. Kirk and Khan never actually meet face to face. They only talk to each other over view screen. They never see each other. There's literally no fighting in that movie whatsoever.
Yeah. And then he's in a brig in the new one. And
yeah. He doesn't get punched in the face, 15 times by Spock.
Yeah. And flying next to Kirk outside the ship in that space suit and stuff. How do you even write that as a composer? Actually, maybe I should give Giacomo his due. How do you do that? You have this most ridiculous thing, and then your director comes to you and just write for this. I really imagine, I imagine the night when John Williams got the script to episode 1, he just fell on his knees and prayed to God that he could do something. God help me with some themes for this. I imagine that's how it happened in Into Darkness. You have to be on your damn toe, as opposed to the pacing in Wrath of Khan. I think is a lot more thoughtful for a composer to think about how they're going to approach themes and motifs, as Horner says.
Right.
It's such a damn good movie. That's just what it comes down to. All right, yep. So we go from talking about an amazing movie to an equally amazing episode.
Warp drive isn't going to do us much good with this knife stuck in our belly.
His brain is gone.
You're a romantic.
So today, if you haven't figured out already, we're discussing Deep Space Nine, and this is kind of a complicated thing, right, Shaun?
Well, complicated how so?
Well, when we first started this, I did so under the precept that we wouldn't be negative Nallies about everything and super nitpicky, even though we just did destroy Into Darkness.
Okay.
So
All
Voyager
right.
is one of the most maligned, if not the most maligned, of any of the Star Trek series. That's to say, people will always mention the negative aspects of it. And I've never once, however, felt that I needed to be on the defensive about it, to say oh, Star Trek Voyager is great because A, B, C, D, and have to go down the line. The reason why I like it so much is because it's campy. Now, that said, and why I use that example, I've never met people that haven't felt that they have to defend DS9 so much so because it's not Trekish. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I feel like the people that do like DS9 are super defensive about it, more so than any other show and any other fan of any other Trek show.
Yeah, absolutely. And they like it for some pretty interesting reasons. And this episode, I think, illustrates those reasons. I think off the bat, I have to say, it reminds me so much of Into Darkness in the sense that people say, oh, that's a great science fiction film, but not a good Star Trek film. And I feel the same way about this episode, where Emissary and DS9 in general is a good science fiction show, but not a good Star Trek show.
I could see that. They diverge too much from the formula of Star Trek. And I know I'm getting kind of convoluted here, but it just... I understand what they're trying to go for, and we'll get into that a little bit. But and I think what they were trying to go for, ultimately, it does work. I just, people will defend it, even like some of the creators, and Ira Stephen Bear is one of them, and he says, you got to change, and you got to, keep going with the times. I don't see it. I don't get this one. This one just doesn't jive that well with me. It just, I don't get it, and I think, I understand that they were trying to make something different, because up until this point in time, you just had, the Starship flagship Enterprise just going through space, alien of the week, adventure of the week, let's do something different. But the way they made it something different just doesn't feel quite right to me. It feels off on pulse.
Yeah, and I think we're being nice. Let's get a little mean about this. I don't like this episode. I know we've refrained from... let's be thoughtful about this. I need to be thoughtful about this and not just say I don't like this episode. We're not going to be like other people we know. It's just, I give this 1 star out of a billion. The thing is we've had a pretty good start with TOS. That's to say, like, could have seen Star Trek with Pike, right? Okay, that first episode, The Cage, you could just imagine, like, that being a series, right? Conversely, Where No Man Has Gone Before, obviously launched a series. Good introduction. Even the most campy parts of, the cue and the sniffing of the stove and stuff like that, and the carpeting in last week's episode, that was not so bad. We talked about, like, how season 1, season 2, they're trying to get their groove and eventually do by, like, season 3 in TNG. However, they're very good. It's very well acted. We talked about last week, like, Picard, Patrick Stewart's, damn good actor, stuff like that. In this, it's amazing to me that it became a series. And I'm not even stretching that. Like, there's no good actor, in my opinion, there's no good actor in this, save for Avery Brooks.
All right. For the most part, I'll agree with that. I think some of the actors find their footing in Deep Space Nine as they go on. And I think the addition of Worf, a character that had already been rooted out for 7 years and a movie, when he comes in season 4, 3 or 4, whenever it is, I think that helps the show a lot. I think when Michael Dorn comes, that helps the show. The problem, though, at that point is the show starts getting so far away and so crazy with its storylines that I feel like it lives in its own unique universe from the rest of the Trek universe, almost.
Yeah. It's war all the time. War, war, war. From episode 1, it's war. It's,
yeah.
not about exploration. Let's not mince words about this. This is from the first time we're going to cover DS9 to the very last day. This is not a show about exploration, and I've seen pretty much everything in DS9, and you're not going to convince me that Little Green Men is going to be a show about exploration and everything. Like, this is not a show dedicated to that. It's completely like C.S. Lewisian. It's just war, and war solves everything.
And from their own words, it's not exploration. They're not going to go on the boundaries. They're going to have the inward exploration because they don't go anywhere. But the inward exploration that gets developed throughout the 7 years, not so good.
No. And you brought up Steve. Okay, you've been to a convention, right? This is a great example. In 2013, when I went to a convention, I sat through both Brannon Braga, who arguably destroyed Voyager, although there wasn't much to destroy already. Like I said, it's my favorite series, and it's campy, and I love it. So Brannon Braga gets up there first before I was Stephen Bear, and Brannon Braga is just like, yeah, it's fun sci-fi, and I wanted to make a fun show. And then he started talking about that space series with oh gosh, I'm gonna kick myself. Who's that astrophysicist that's really so great? Neil deGrasse Tyson. He did his little special, and that's all practically talked about, is just having fun at making sci-fi. Ira Stephen Bear gets up there right after him. Now, mind you, like, some of the worst episodes in Star Trek history were written under Brannon Braga's watch. Okay, just keep that in mind when I say this. Ira Stephen Bear gets up there, and it's a 20-minute discussion defending DS9 and why DS9 is important in the lexicon of Star Trek. And that's the point that I made earlier, where people feel that they have to defend this automatically as soon as they start talking about DS9. When you watch an episode like this, I mean, it becomes obvious why.
No, you're right. And I mean, Chris and I obviously know the same people. We grew up in the same place, and I mean, I lived there until just a few years ago. So the majority of our lives, we've known the same people and had similar discussions with similar people, and the DS9 friends that we have are all the same. Where it's so much. It's like they're trying to defend it so much they want it to be better than everything else. And rather than saying, at least you have the humility of saying, I like Star Trek Voyager. I know it's pretty campy, and it's not the same as the original series, but I like it nonetheless. I feel like people like DS9 are like, no, this is Star Trek. It's so Star Trek that it's more Star Trek than Star Trek. And it's just like, that's not just, no, it's stop. It's not. It's not. It's not.
No, and they'll defend it. They'll defend it to the death. The series. Let's talk about the beginning of this episode. It doesn't feel like Star Trek in the sense of what's going on in the universe around. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Like, in the beginning of TOS, it's obvious you get the vibe they're explorers. That's just what it is. Like, they're on the way to the Great Barrier, and they're exploring an unexplored region. That's the theme. You feel that theme. When you get to TNG, it's sort of the same theme, but it's more along the theme of human limitation of that exploration. Something that the first episode of TOS didn't really achieve extremely well, but that's the whole purpose of Q, is to show the limitations of humanity. And that's the theme of TNG, is humans can progress so far, but not far enough. But it keeps that theme consistent. This episode in Emissary, I don't know what the theme is. I guess the theme is war. I guess the theme is Sisko being really upset. I guess the theme is religion. There's so much going on that you don't get a sense, you don't get a feel of where the characters are going in a singular direction.
There's something there, as you're talking about theme, there's something there about Sisko living in his past, living when his wife dies, and never, for 3 years, never letting that go. And the character makes a development by the end of it where he is able to let that go. But it's poorly portrayed, and if you want me to elaborate on it, I can't, because I don't quite understand it. I know that that's what they were going for, but I can't really get the actual I don't know, the force behind it, the actual kind of story or the moral that I'm supposed to pull away from it.
Right. I mean, just tangibly. Okay, so he's on the science vessel. Okay. Now, I'm going to give a pass on this, that, you have this Borg threat coming in, so perhaps they were on deep space mission or something, and they got called away to try to stop the Borg Q coming. The point is, I don't like the idea of Sisko's wife even being on there. This is like scene 1. I'm already complaining about this episode. I don't like the idea that there's civilians on there. Save the civilians, he says. Why are there civilians on this ship? Okay, fine, it's a deep space ship, and there's civilians on the Enterprise, which is arguably, not arguably. It is the flagship of the Enterprise doing this missions. Why are their families on that? But why is there a family, if they're going to go fight the Borg, who they know is the greatest threat to the universe? Drop off your family at the nearest dang planet.
Right, I agree. And that's actually on my notes, number 1, and it's why does Starfleet keep civilians when they're going to battle? Like, it's not like Wolf 359 just happened, like, oh, here's a battle. Like, no, they didn't just come across a Romulan ship that was being aggressive, or, rogue Klingon that wanted to fire on them or anything like that. This was planned for. Best of both worlds makes no questions about that. They planned to engage the Borg in that sector for that purpose. So why would there be, and I'm repeating your question, why would there be a ship that has families there? Why would they allow civilians to just... It's like they don't care. You can't make the argument that they don't have time to drop them off, because they have to have time. They have shuttles. They have escape pods. There has to be some kind of protocol for that. Right. I absolutely agree. You know what? In fact, because I want to talk about that more. So, and I captured that. So I'm going to play it real quick where he meets Picard.
Come. Commander. Yes, please, come in. Welcome to Bajor. It's been a long time, Captain. We met before. Yes, sir. We met in battle. I was on the Saratoga at Wolf 359. I assume that you have been briefed on the events leading to the Cardassian withdrawal.
Yes, sir. I understand they spent the last half-century robbing the planet of every valuable resource before abandoning it.
They've left the Bajorans without a means of being self-sustaining. The relief efforts we've been coordinating are barely adequate. I've come to know the Bajorans. I'm a strong proponent for their entry into the Federation.
Is it going to happen?
Not easily. Ruling parties are at each other's throats. Factions that were united against the Cardassians have resumed old conflicts.
Sounds like they're not ready.
Your job is to do everything, short of violating the Prime Directive, to make sure that they are.
Should I consider a replacement? That's probably a good idea.
I have been made aware by Starfleet of your objections to this assignment. I would have thought that after 3 years spent at the Utopia Planitia Yards that you would be ready for a change.
I have a son that I'm raising alone, Captain. This is not the ideal environment.
It's a poor read on Sisko part and understanding of how the Borg function. Pretty big mistake in the Star Trek universe.
Yeah, I feel like the Borg are a big enough threat that you wouldn't make that kind of mistake. And I feel like part of the reason why they have his wife die, at least at 359, is to have that conflict with Picard. And I've heard this, like watching this episode and doing some research about it, they always said Gene never wanted, and I've heard some of this too, even in the original series, Gene Roddenberry didn't want conflict amongst humans in the future because that's not the way people acted in the future. They were above that. It was behind them. And the writers in Next Generation, you know, thought that was hard to write for. They're just like, well, we've got a ship full of humans that can't have conflict with each other. What are we going to do week after week? Brandon Braga has actually been on record and saying that he liked it. He liked those constraints because it made him think of other plots that he wouldn't have thought of in a normal circumstance. Stephen Bear talks about being okay with it, but for some reason in this first episode, they just crap all over that and just say, well, they're going to have, like, 2 Starfleet officers are going to have conflict with each other for a reason that's absurd.
Yeah. They played so well, too, in First Contact, where Admiral Hayes doesn't want Picard to be in the battle, and it's, you know, the underlying thing is that he was part of the Borg and it would create a bad situation, and it's done so well in that movie that you don't get a sense that you hardly even see Admiral Hayes in that movie, but you get a sense of how Admiral Hayes feels about Picard. And I think that's how this should have been played. Not like, I hate you for what you did, but more like unforgiving of the situation that Picard unfortunately was put in, but not necessarily hateful about it. I don't know. I think it could have been acted better. Maybe that's what it is. I just don't like the acting.
But I don't know. There's just,
I'm gonna do my duty. You know, nobody says that. Like, you're right. Two Starfleet officers, and one put in an unpredictable situation of being assimilated by the Borg, and you're gonna blame that on. Unfortunately, here's how the scene didn't play out how I would have liked to have it played out, was with Sisko saying something along the lines of, you know, there was a lot of casualties that day, or, you know, something more broad and foreboding about the situation, and then have Picard lament on it. It just doesn't come across like that.
Well, so one thing about the acting, and I'm going to talk about this again, Patrick Stewart does an amazing job there, because as soon as Avery Brooks says, we met at the Battle of Wolf 359, Patrick Stewart gets such a good look on his face. He doesn't say anything. He's just got like a half kind of curled lip, disappointed look on his face. And you're just like, oh my God. Like, you know, you can see that Picard's just like, oh man, like, this is going to suck. Like, I hate that.
Picard knows what it means. Yeah, and that's Patrick Stewart interpreting that so well. I'm pretty sure the director didn't, you know, sit down with Patrick Stewart and was like, play it like this. Like, that's just, it's so intuitive about right. The situation of what occurred at Wolf 359. But yeah, you're right. He is just fully committed to that. I think, and Avery Brooks is just whiny.
Yeah, he does come off as whiny, and I don't know. Picard keeps being cordial and diplomatic and very Picard throughout the entire scene. Like, even like you hear at one point he's pouring him tea or something, whatever that happens to be, and Sisko just refuses it, and, you know, keeps going with this little bitchy kind of attitude. And it's just like, you know, you don't have to act like that, you know. And you're in a pseudo military organization, and Starfleet is a pseudo military organization. Yeah, I understand that they're more like explorers, but that's a conversation for a different time. Can you get away with talking to a superior officer like that? I feel like Picard could just like break him down so quickly for talking just crazily like that.
Yeah, don't like it. And in Voyager, they make a really good point that commanding officers have to have a certain relationship with other commanding officers, and the point's made in Voyager that Captain Janeway really doesn't have that relationship with other officers. And a really good episode is Equinox, where she meets another captain, and they do have that relationship. It's like a relationship on a completely different plane because they've experienced different stuff. It's not this where Sisko just won't even have anything to do with Picard, and it's such a loss.
Right. I don't know.
How can you grow from that? Because, who's to say, like, down the line when you meet some crazy, I don't know, Cardassian, and you need some help, like, why would you burn that bridge as a Starfleet officer? Because we know what happens at Earth. Like, it gets invaded by the Dominion. That becomes a big threat. Like, why would you burn the bridge of the most important Starfleet captain in Starfleet, in charge of the flagship? Why would you burn that bridge? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's a really important person that you should not be so crappy towards.
It's so unfortunate.
I don't know.
Fortunate that this series gets started like this.
Everyone's angry from that. And I'm going to backtrack, and I'm going to play another clip here that happens before, because I think they even mentioned, like, oh, Captain Picard wants you on the Enterprise. And then we go back, like, a few minutes later, and they're like, hey, Captain Picard's hailing you again to go aboard the Enterprise. So it's just that Sisko doesn't want to go. And I understand that there might be him because of that, but there shouldn't be so much ill will towards him because of that. I feel like it would be more of, like, just bringing up the past and bad memories, but to blame him, I think, is a little beyond the scope of a reasonable person, especially a reasonable person in this, what should be idyllic future. But I'm going to go back when we first introduced, or when they first introduced Kira, rather, and that's this clip.
You are throwing it all away. All of you.
You're being a fool.
Well then, don't ask my opinion next time. Yes.
I'm Benjamin Sisko.
I suppose you want the office.
Well, I thought I'd say hello first, and then take the office. But we could do it in any order you like.
Hello.
Is something bothering you, Major?
You don't want to ask me that, Commander.
Why not?
Because I have the bad habit of telling the truth, even when people don't want to hear it.
Perhaps I want to hear it.
I don't believe the Federation has any business being here.
The provisional government disagrees with you.
The provisional government and I don't agree on a lot of things, which is probably why they sent me to this godforsaken place. I have been fighting for Bajoran independence since I was old enough to pick up a phaser. We finally drive the Cardassians out, and what do our new leaders do? They call up the Federation and invite them right in.
The Federation is only here to help...
Help us. Yes, I know. The Cardassians said the same thing 60 years ago.
Major, when I was ordered here, I requested a Bajoran national as my first officer. It made sense. It still does, at least to me. Now, you and I are going to have to find some way to...
Yes, Major.
Odo, are you reading something at A14?
My security array has been down for 2 hours. I'll meet you there.
We've been having a lot of break-ins lately. No need for you to come along, Commander.
So he's like the opposite there. It seems like he's just down to do his duty and excited to, not necessarily excited to be there, but he's not so pessimistic.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And there's the writing, however, is so bad to me. I don't know. I don't like the writing. I'll just say it. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's just not very... I don't want to be all highbrow about it. Like, it's not... You don't expect Shakespeare from Star Trek. But you don't expect, I'm pissy. Are you pissy too? And, like, hormones raging and stuff. I don't know. I don't like the writing. I think it could have been a little better written.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You have seriousness. I don't think this show ever takes itself serious. Maybe that's another problem I have with it. TOS is as campy as that's like the ultimate camp. I don't think you could get any more campy than that. But the show always took itself serious. Same thing with Voyager. Like, they're always dedicated to what's going on. This situation just seems annoyed at what's going on around them. And the actors just seem annoyed. Like, that's a good way, I think, of putting it. Just, everyone's pissy to be in the situation.
Right, yeah. And, originally Kira's character was supposed to be Ensign Rowe. Which I don't know how that would have worked, because they would have had another Starfleet officer on this ship instead of a Bajoran, unless somehow she became, a Bajoran national, or, whatever their military is.
Oh, man, and let's talk about the Bajorans, because I don't care about them. They're just one species. Like, Shaun and I have talked about, this is for everybody else out there. Shaun and I have talked about the Klingon and the Klingon episodes not necessarily being the greatest. However, I can get behind the Klingons in the sense that they're very Roddenberry-esque. The sort of outside warrior and Federation's not going to be like that. I respect what Roddenberry was saying about the Klingons. And I think they have their place. And I don't think their episodes are necessarily the most entertaining, but I don't think they're boring. I don't think they're a boring species. Now, conversely, I think the Bajorans are like plain... It's like cheese pizza is what they are. You're just like, why did you order a cheese pizza? Like, get pepperoni on the side at least.
I mean, I agree with you, and the Klingons were supposed to be, in the original series, the Romulans were supposed to be the Chinese threat, and the Klingons were supposed to represent the Russian threat, if I understand it correctly. So, there was something to pull off of from there, and obviously they built from there, and that's not what the Klingons are now, but initially that's how they were created. But the Bajorans, I don't really understand. Granted, the Bajorans came from the Next Generation, and but Next Generation, they're very much a suppressed people that basically have been, conquered and put into more or less slavery for years upon years, and then DS9 takes it and doesn't spin it into gold. It makes them a highly religious people, which I think in Star Trek is very unique and very dangerous and very I don't know. I feel like Star Trek, this is another thing that I have with DS9. I don't think that Star Trek tackles religion in this manner ever before or ever after. I don't think it, like, every now and then it might poke at religion, but it never just takes it full on like this and embraces it and makes it a part of something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's talk about objectivism on the captain's part, because I imagine there's situations where, there's we've talked about the temptation of Pike and the temptation of Kirk, and are they gonna Pike more than Kirk in the cage, where is he just gonna live out his days on this planet kind of thing, and where I'm going with this is Sisko just fully embraces it. He doesn't seem so anti against it, and maybe that's like an evolution that I don't see, because I know by the end, like, he fully is the emissary. But I think they could have played the hokiness up on his part.
Right.
Because he is questioning. I don't want to make it sound like he's not an atheist or anything, or an agnostic. Like, he is like, well, these are just the religion of the Bajoran people, and, I don't really subscribe to that. He is distant. However, I guess my whole thing is by the end of this, he's just, and by the end of this, I mean, like, all of DS9, he just is the emissary. He embraces it 100%.
Right. And by that point, there's more evidence to support that. So he does start out very skeptical and traditionally so. The part is that you get in this pilot, you get ill-defined religion, and I know like you're not going to be able to define the Bajoran religion in a 2-hour episode, and I don't expect them to. But like the first real like glimpse into it that you get is the guy on the promenade saying to Cisco like, come check out the prophets, and Cisco's like, another time perhaps, and the Bajoran just goes, another time, like he knows he's going to come back, and then that guy comes back in later and he's like, it's time now.
That's the Shakespeare writing. Fortinbras will come in at the end. I'm here. Oh my god. Okay, so let's talk about O'Brien. Because this is another ridiculous thing. I see you have an O'Brien clip. Oh my gosh.
I do have an O'Brien, and this is O'Brien.
I don't like O'Brien. Okay. You're right. Maybe I don't like Star Trek. Okay. I never thought O'Brien was like the most standout awesome character to be on TNG. And there's that scene, remember, where Q sees him and he runs into O'Brien a little later on in DS9, and he's like, "Who are you?" And Q says, "Oh, I remember you. You were one of the little people." And
right.
I don't think I would have been okay if O'Brien just stayed on the Enterprise. Like he was just that kind of like, okay, he's there. The thing is like this scene tries and has to elevate him to some huge thing because he's going on into this series and is going to be in charge of the operations here on DS9. However, this seals my fate of what I think of him because his interaction with Picard is just so bad, I think. I don't like it. It's like, once again, you have Captain Picard. Like, this is not a random guy. This is like the dude. Okay, so this is a good thing too. By the time Emissary gets started, TNG's already been going on for a while. We have an idea of what Picard's like and how other people think of him. He is respected in the Federation. He is arguably like the most well-known and most respected dude. And O'Brien and the way that Cisco treats him, like in this episode, is just like he might as well just be dog poo. Okay, I've said my piece. Do you want to play the clip?
I'm gonna play the clip. I got stuff to say about it too, but we'll do it afterward.
The captain's in the ready room, Chief. Should I tell him you're here?
That's okay. Thanks.
Ooh, shafted.
Transport me to the ops pad, Maggie.
Yes, sir.
Mr. O'Brien, I understand that I just missed you on the bridge.
Yes, sir. I didn't want to disturb you, sir.
Ensign. This is your favorite transporter room, isn't it?
Number 3. Yes, sir.
You know, yesterday, I called down here, and I asked for you without thinking. It won't be quite the same.
It's just a transporter room, sir. Permission to disembark, Captain.
Permission granted.
Energize.
Listen to the music here because it's perfect. Oh, okay. Before we get to anything, I got to stop and talk about the very end part where the music plays. Because if you notice it, as soon as Picard transports him off, if you're watching it, it goes to an exterior shot that shows the Enterprise, and it kind of it's centered on the Enterprise, and it pans down to DS9. But it starts out, and this is just really cool. It's not necessarily that amazing or amazingly done. It's just really cool in my opinion, because it starts out with this kind of original series nod where it doesn't quite play the original series theme, but there's little hints of it there. And then it goes into the Next Generation, and then as it pans down to Deep Space Nine, it goes into the Deep Space Nine theme, and then it fades out for commercial. And I was just like, yeah, I love that. That's great. That was really well done. Like there's a good little nod to what you've done before. And that was all who did this? Dennis McCarthy did this episode, I think, right?
Yes. Yeah, very well known, very good composer. Very I'll give that its due. It's very, very good.
Well, Dennis McCarthy does most of the Star Trek stuff. You know, I mean, it's split in between Dennis McCarthy and Jerry Goldsmith, and of course Alexander Courage. But
it's just smart. It's very smart and very attuned into the idea of theme that we were talking about as far as composers go earlier, where he obviously had an idea of what this meant for this series. Very big intuition for a composer to do.
Yeah,
now,
very much
what about the shafted Picard? I've been shafted like that on a date before.
Okay. Well, so here's part of the problem. We talked about this last week when we were talking about Encounter at Farpoint. Picard, where was he? He was in his ready room. He wasn't on the bridge. He was in his ready room. I understand that the ready room is adjacent to the bridge and you can just go there and hang out. But this just furthers my theory that Picard's just not on the bridge most of the time. He's on the bridge like 15% of his shift, I feel like. The rest of the time is spent reading archaeology or classic novels and feeding his fish.
He's always looking at Pat, too. Yeah, I'm down for that. Like, yeah, I agree with you. And then...
This furthers it. And it's even funnier, like, what time of day did O'Brien go to the bridge to say goodbye to everybody? Because he went when Worf's not there, Picard's not there, Troy's not there, Riker's not there. We don't see the front con station. So Data might have been there, but I feel like if Riker and Picard were gone, Data would have been sitting in the chair, the main chair. So we don't see anybody. So, like, did he go at, like, the 3 a.m. shift?
I hope so.
I think it's when Data works, actually. I think Data works at 3 a.m. shift.
Yeah, because he doesn't have to sleep. Yeah, I think they've established that, right? I know Harry Kim has the late shift. I'm pretty sure Data would have late shift, too.
I think in Lower Decks or something like that, they one of those later episodes, it establishes that Data is the captain late at night when everyone else is sleeping.
Right. And this scene...
When he's not running it. I was going to say, when he's not running a dream program.
Right. I think in this scene, this is where Picard doesn't work as well as it does for Sisko. Now I'm giving that other scene its due, because I see where they were going with that with Sisko and Picard, right? Okay, makes sense. Somebody like O'Brien, not so much. It's not like Captain Kirk and Spock relationship, or it's not like Riker relationship with Picard, right? So I think it would have worked better had it been somebody like Data, like a little lower officer, and if that officer wasn't shafted the way Picard was shafted, if they did, go to the transport room and say, "Hey, I'm gonna really miss you," that would have been a really good scene.
Right. And, I think the only reason that we remember O'Brien so well from Next Generation is because he was on Deep Space Nine as main character.
Yeah.
Because, there's some of those side characters in Next Gen that recur, but you don't think about them too much. And they get their due, or, they get their little scenes, but, I think the only reoccurring side character, and I'm going to put her in this category, is Guinan.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, O'Brien was there a little bit, but not, and granted he was in the first episode, but he doesn't really do a whole lot, and I don't think you even see him after Encounter at Farpoint. I don't know when the next time you see him is. I feel like you don't see him for a couple years.
He's the Argyle of the Enterprise. It's kind of obscure. No, okay, so oh my goodness. Okay, so also talk about bland characters. I don't like the Cardassians. I think they're ridiculous. Like, they were a ridiculous species to me in TNG, and to have them as like the main villain now in DS9, it just seems ridiculous to me. They try to be like the warrior race, kind of. I don't know. What are they, Shaun? They're like the bureaucratic warrior species of the universe.
Yeah, and that establishes later a little bit more when they get full swing into the war, where the Cardassians aren't the warriors. They're more. They're kind of the administrators, but what's Jeffrey Combs, Wei-Un's character? I can't think of his what that speech called right now, but those are really the bureaucrats in that whole system. Do you remember what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Wei-Un's character, whatever the species that is. I can't remember the name. Iggy Pop played one in one of the episodes.
Yeah, they're guardians of the Founders.
Right, and then there's the Founders too. I feel like it's the Dominion, or it's not the Dominion, but the Jem'Hadar are the warriors, and a little bit the Breen, and then everyone crowds and administrators. Everybody else is in the Dominion.
Oh my God! It's like the Alliance to defy ISIS. It's like why is it so ridiculous? I don't know. The Dominion is ridiculous to me, just in general, because then they are all part of the Dominion and not the. You don't have like the Wei-Un dudes and the Founders and the Brain. They just become the Dominion.
Right.
I don't know. It's complicated. I guess not complicated, just overly complicated, more complicated than it needs to be, because they need to have that war. Like it just needs to be war all the time. And then even when it's not war, it's the most. Okay, I'm gonna bring up This Week in Trek here. This is one where Michael Gaines is completely right when it comes to this. 1 week when they were talking about DS9, this is a little early in their This Week in Trek's podcast series, and he was talking about remembering when DS9 came, and he made mention that he stopped watching it in about the second season, and the episode that he stopped watching it was the episode where they Alan Moraine, count to 3, Alan Moraine, then and that's how ridiculous it is. Like, even when it's not war, it's ridiculous. Like, it's so campy that I have to ask people, like, how come you hate Voyager? Like, how can you, when they don't know how to do anything on this show except war? Okay, I said my piece.
Fair enough.
Do you like this? What are your problems with DS9, Shaun?
Oh, I don't know. So first of all, I guess my overarching problem is that they have war, and I know that the idea that they wanted to. They wanted to say that there was an ugly side of the galaxy, which I understand that they wanted to say that, but at the same time, I think Gene Roddenberry wanted to say that there was no ugly side of the galaxy. That maybe these problems existed, but we as Starfleet and as humans could, overcome that ugliness. And I feel like, especially there's that one episode that everyone always picks up that's basically Cisco doing his personal log, talking about how he tricked the Romulans into getting into the war.
Yeah, in the pale moonlight.
Yes. It's just, that's not an example of what I think you'd want. Like, that's them snooping and sneaking onto that level to get their own way. And I think that wouldn't have happened. I'll have to look into it. And I'll do some research over the next week, and maybe I'll just replace one of my segments next week with this discussion. But there was a discussion about, which is arguably the most popular episode of Star Trek ever, which is in the City on the Edge of Forever. And it was about how the original script had, I think Edith Keeler didn't die because Kirk ended up saving her, and there's something along those lines. And Gene Roddenberry said no, because Kirk knows the ultimate goal is to maintain the timeline as we know it and the peacefulness. And if he does that, that's not the way people are going to act, and that's not the way they're going to do it. And so that episode, again, arguably the best episode in Star Trek, had a far more dynamic script in the beginning, and Gene just said no. And it still ended up being an insanely wonderful episode for many reasons. And I feel like DS doesn't take heed of that.
Yeah.
And obviously Gene's gone by this point in time, so he can't say yes or no to any of that.
Well, he was even kind of used the wrong word, an ironic word. Gene was very militant against certain things that he saw as defeating the universe, and a great point is his clashes with Nicholas Meyer over the Klingons in episode 6, the movie, the 6th movie, and he was so protective of that universe. How could you not want to carry that on? And how can you just turn your whole back at the same time saying you're a fan, turn your back and just being like, well, he was wrong, and we're going to turn our back on the founding principles of that. I can't. Even as bad as I think Into Darkness is in places, I don't think J.J. Abrams ever said, let's set out to make something anti-Gene Roddenberry. He wanted to go in a different direction, just like Ira Steven Behr did, and Rick Berman. There's no question that J.J. Abrams said that. However, this series, I feel, is a flagrant anti-Roddenberry-esque show. I said
the new movies are not, to further your point, the new movies are not dirty and gritty and the darker side of this universe. The new movies are action packed and fast paced, but they're not gritty by any means, and they don't try to be gritty. And one of the things that makes me, I guess this is another reason that another problem I have with DS9, and this is all over Star Trek. DS9 does it all over the place with their kind of grittiness to campiness scale. Like, they have episodes that are insanely campy, and then they have other episodes like the Pale Moonlight that are just overly gritty. Like, they try to be super realistic in this universe, super antagonistic, super pessimistic, and then a week later you're on the holosuite talking to Vic Fontaine for an hour.
Excellent point. I think, I kind of said it better. And I mean, like, even the episode, the black and white episode of DS9, where Sisko's like that. He's like a reporter or something like that during the civil rights era.
You go from the stars.
Yeah, fantastic episode, and then you could have like the next week, like Alan Moraine, Count of Four, Alan Moraine. It is just all over the place,
right?
All over the place.
Yeah, and it's on such a scale that, and all the Star Treks do this. They do this to a certain extent, where the camp compared to the seriousness, there's a balance that they strike. I mean, for Balance of Terror episode in the original series, you'll get a shore leave episode. So there's this basically a parallel to a World War II U-boat episode, and then a few weeks later you get the White Rabbit episode.
Yeah.
So like that happens. I get that it happens in Star Trek. You get the best of both worlds, and then you get Data learning how to dance with Dr. Crusher. It happens, but it doesn't happen so extreme or as extreme as it does in Deep Space Nine.
You can't take it serious. Because once you've established a certain level of seriousness, there's nothing more serious than war, okay? So once you've established that level, to try to be able to go back and do a lighthearted episode the next week is very hard to do. When you're dealing with something like Voyager, where you have an episode where they turn into lizards one week, but it has that element of science fiction, it's okay that the next week that you try to be a little more serious in the vein of science fiction. Or you can conversely go towards the direction of humor in the next episode. The point is like you have a balance. You have a really good balance. In DS9, there's nowhere else to go other than down or up, both being in bad directions. Once you start at the premise that war solves everything, how can you possibly have an episode next, the week after, Earth is almost destroyed? How can you possibly have an episode the next week listening to Vic Fontaine on the holodeck? It's just insane. It's mind-boggling. I bring up the Little Green Men episode. Like, that is the most ridiculous episode. I don't know how many times I'm going to say this is the most ridiculous episode and then name a different episode. But anyway, it's the most ridiculous episode because, they're like the aliens in 1947 crashing in Roswell and stuff like that. And yeah, okay, that's fine camp and stuff like that. But then, like, the next episode has to deal with war again. It's like, how do you like that? I don't like that. So we have baseball. Oh my god. Okay, there's like an entire episode about baseball in this series.
Eventually, we get into the wormhole. So eventually, Dax and Cisco go out in a roundabout. Because that's all the action we're going to get is a roundabout for this entire show. We don't know about the Defiant yet. They hadn't come up with the Defiant yet. All we're going to get is shuttlecrafts.
Oh my god, I hate that. Okay, so sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm going to cut you off on this. I'm very sorry, but I have to say this. Like, to have a mulligan, to have a plot device diminishes the Defiant for me. Fans of this series cry tears of madness over how awesome the Defiant is, and it's a mulligan. That's all it is. It's a plot device because you unfortunately didn't have the foresight to realize that starting a series on a space station is stupid in a show dedicated to exploration. All right, sorry, Shaun, go ahead, go.
I'm just laughing because every time we bring up one new subject, it just brings up a million other subjects that we're just going to hate on. I absolutely agree. Why on earth? So if you're going to have this Wild West town in space with Cisco being the mayor and Odo's the sheriff and you got a bunch of colorful characters around and it's going to be, giddy up time, but in the Star Trek universe, do you introduce the horseless carriage all of a sudden? It's just oh, well, here, we also have a ship that is a Starfleet ship that works like other Starfleet ships. And when we're bored, we're just going to take this ship and go explore something in the Gamma Quadrant that's never been seen before and have, an alien of the week or an anomaly of the week like TNG does or Voyager will do. And you're right. It just... I don't...
There's an episode where they get shrunken down on in a spaceship. Okay, I just had to mention that. Okay, talk as much crap as people want about Voyager, but I could point out things in DS9 pretty easily. Oh, and what's more? This is great. When they introduce the Defiant, they say, this is a ship designed to fight the Borg. And then in First Contact, it just gets trashed. Prepare for ramming speed. You're in a ship designed to fight the Borg. I'm very passionate about my hate tonight.
It's convoluted. I don't. Yeah. Well.
All right. Sorry. Talk about baseball, Shaun.
If we keep getting to this, somebody's gonna be sad that we're not talking crap about Haunting of Deck 15 or whatever it is.
Ichep is so good in that show. Ichep's a very good character. Oh, that's for another day.
Yeah,
all right,
well, don't worry. There's plenty wrong with Next Gen 2 in the first season, and we'll get to all of it in time. But right now, let's keep our focus on this one bad episode that we're reviewing right now.
Aggressive. Adversarial.
Competition. For fun. It's a game that Jake and I play on the holodeck. It's called baseball.
Baseball? What is this?
I was afraid you'd ask that. I throw this ball to you, and this other player stands between us with a bat, a stick, and he tries to hit the ball in between these two white lines. Oh. The rules aren't important. What's important is it's linear. Every time I throw this ball, 100 different things can happen in a game. He might swing and miss. He might hit it. The point is, you never know. You try to anticipate. Set a strategy for all the possibilities as best you can. But in the end, it comes down to throwing one pitch after another and seeing what happens. With each new consequence, the game begins to take shape.
And you have no idea what that shape is until it is completed.
That's right. In fact, the game wouldn't be worth playing if we knew what was going to happen.
You value your ignorance of what is to come?
That may be the most important thing to understand about humans. It is the unknown that defines our existence. We are constantly searching, not just for answers to our questions, but for new questions. We are explorers. We explore our lives, day by day. And we explore the galaxy, trying to expand the boundaries of our knowledge. And that is why I am here. Not to conquer you with weapons or with ideas, but to coexist and learn.
Oh my god, the only thing more boring than watching a baseball game is people talking about it in this way. No, I jest. So here you go, like, imagine that you meet God, right? And God in this sense are aliens, right? They're aliens in this wormhole. And they're drawing from Sisko's memories. I'm okay with this. Like, I'm alright with telepathic aliens and stuff like this. I don't like the baseball talk, though.
That's how you teach the aliens of what linear means, what a linear life is. Because apparently they transcend time, so they don't understand, before and after, a past, a present, a future. So this ball's the perfect now, just to make a convoluted situation more convoluted. And also to just throw out there for the first time ever that Sisko likes baseball. The only other time that you get this impression in the entire episode is at one point Jake is sleeping and Ben Sisko goes to say like goodnight to him or something like that. He's got a baseball glove and ball in his hand. I accuse the Cage of being heavy-handed on plot, but it wasn't anywhere near that makes it look like a feather glove compared to this, where all of a sudden you see a baseball scene and it's like, oh well, this Sisko likes baseball.
And how? Okay, so we talked about Captain Picard likes reading. He reads the classics and stuff like that. Captain Kirk likes playing chess with Spock. Captain Janeway, she has this weird holo novel where she's like in Fairhaven is the town. It's kind of weird, kind of gothic kind of things that she likes to do. Captain Archer, I'm not sure about Captain Archer. We'll get to that later on. I'd like to learn more about him. But I can't get behind this. Like, I don't know why it seems so camp to me. But, like, choosing baseball is like, I don't know, like forcing Americanism on top of something that should be universal. Maybe that's my problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, it does give you the presumption that baseball is timeless, being as how it exists that far into the future, which I don't think anybody, well, I mean, maybe, but baseball is very uniquely American. It's not worldly at all. It's not even that popular in America anymore. I mean, MLB is hugely popular in America, but I mean, I don't know. It just this is to help show that he's stuck 3 years in the past when his wife dies.
Yeah, that's a great read into it. Yeah.
That's the point that they're trying to get to it. It's just it's hard to get there. Like you don't get there. I guess for me at least, you have to think about it a lot. That's what they're trying to do.
And you're absolutely right, because this is the climax. I mean, this forces him to go back to Captain Picard and like, I'm gonna do this now.
Right. And I don't know. It seems heavy-handed to me. And maybe it's not heavy-handed. Maybe it's just kind of long and dull because it's kind of rough. He's in the wormhole for a really long time. I feel like he's in the wormhole for almost the entire half of the episode.
Oh my gosh!
There's not a whole lot of change. So, and in the meantime, we're not meeting any of the other characters. Like we barely get to meet Dax and Bashir in this time.
Yeah. Well, we have that really cool flashback scene. Well, not flashback. Well, yeah, I guess it is. Dax is a Trill, so she has other lives. That's kind of cool, actually. She's like, she's like probably my favorite character out of this series so far because she's such a complex. She's the only one that seems complex to me because she does have those different lives that she's lived in the past. She was great on Becker.
Yeah, first Becker reference.
Okay, Picard leaves. You got this clip, and
all right,
he goes. So this is such a stretch. Okay, sorry, go. I want to talk about
so
this.
We're gonna listen to this real quick, and this is, as Chris said, this is the last scene where Picard's leaving.
I suspect that the sight of their warship being towed by a Federation runabout took the heart out of their fight.
We're not done with the Cardassians yet. Not with the strategic importance of that wormhole.
Well, you've put Bajor on the map, Commander. This will shortly become a leading center of commerce and of scientific exploration. And for Starfleet, one of our most important posts.
Captain, regarding our conversation about someone to replace me...
Yes, I'm sorry I haven't had time yet to communicate that to Command.
I would prefer you ignore it, sir.
I'm not sure that I can. Are you certain that's what you want? Because we cannot afford to have a commanding officer who is...
I'm certain, sir.
Good luck, Mr. Sisko.
Okay, so they blew up this Cardassian ship.
Hold on. Because
Okay.
I'm going to stop you real quick because I'm going to say a few things that I actually like about this. So the first time we see Picard, he's Locutus, and we meet him as an adversary in this episode. The next time that we meet Picard, Sisko is on the Enterprise. So Sisko goes to Picard to talk to him. And then, we have that whole scene that we discussed. The third time that we see Picard, it's him and O'Brien. So that's just kind of I feel like that's the Dr. McCoy and Data scene of this episode. So I'm not including that one. So this final episode, we're in the office on Ops on DS9 where Picard goes to see Sisko. And so I think, in a weird way, there is a scene progression that creates character development within Sisko. And it's just through those three phases where, we meet Patrick Stewart as an adversary, then we meet him in his location, not as much as of an adversary, but still as a person to be unhappy with, and then we go to... he's coming to me, and we're, all one big happy Starfleet again.
Yeah, I like that. I agree. Good analysis.
Thank you.
This is great, too. They only have 6 torpedoes on DS9. Well, I guess they're kind of, broken down, but 6 torpedoes. All right, so Anybody out there that wants to start crap about how many torpedoes Voyager fires, I'll just keep saying 6 torpedoes on DS9. In the first episode we watched, you knew who Spock was. Like, you knew that Scotty was a mechanic. You got a sense of every single character. In TNG, same thing. Like, all Tasha Yar had to do was just go, hiya! And you knew that she was, like, the brute strength. Picard was, the diplomat having to do with Crazy Q. Like, you got a sense of every character. Alright, we get to DS9, and it's like Quark and Odo and Kira, even by the end of the episode, like, they're gone. It's like they don't even matter, really, in the grand scheme of things. Anything that they did. Dax, Bashir, we didn't even talk about Bashir at all in this episode. He's in there. But, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's fine to have a protagonist. I'm okay with that. I understand that that's Sisko, but, like, this episode is just Sisko. That's it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's little to no character development of everybody else.
That was ranty, too. And
poor Odo is...
Sorry, go ahead.
Barely explained. The only way Odo is explained is, one, he gets that mace, that chain mace thrown through his head that he liquefies through, and then another one, he gives Kira like a couple lines speech where he's just like, I may have came from the Delta Quadrant. I don't know where I'm at. I'm just here. Like, I'm the outsider looking in this episode. I better go back here with you because this might be where I'm from.
Oh my god!
Like, and don't get me wrong, I love Rene Auberjonois. He's cool, and he's actually one of the better actors in Deep Space Nine. But I just, and he was also in MASH.
Hot Lips.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have showcased them in some way. You don't get. Spock doesn't get shafted, none of the characters, like Sulu doesn't get shafted. None of the characters get shafted the way that I think they do in this series. Yeah, this is just, like, sweep them under a rug. Mm-hmm. And, O'Brien, arguably, like, the only scenes he has are those scenes that, when he's on the Enterprise. Like, that's it. Like, it's just weird to me. Yeah. It's such a weird way to start a series.
Right.
A series that everybody loves. I mean, let's just face the truth. Like, I don't know why people like this show so much, and they do.
I think it's polarizing amongst Trek fans, and obviously we lie on the negative side of the polarity.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
There's definitely a positive side of the polarity that we're not on. So hopefully, we'll have a rotation every 5 weeks. Hopefully it's not like this every 5th week where me and you are just like, ugh, ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, we got Enterprise coming up. I mean, let's give this show its due. And
and who knows? Maybe getting into Enterprise will be like, man, I can't wait for DS9.
Yeah. I mean, there's crazy episodes of Voyager. But once again, this is just making my point in a rant, and off topic, but, like, Voyager doesn't neglect any of the characters, and I'm pretty sure Enterprise doesn't. Not like this. Like, why would you like this? And it doesn't have the interjection of the religion and the angry and the war, and it's just not, it's not Star Trek.
Yeah, you get a lot more from, and we'll talk about this in depth next week, but you get a lot more from Caretaker and those characters than you do these characters from Emissary. Mm-hmm. Emissary is basically the Benjamin Sisko show.
Yeah, it is. The Sisko. As the founders say. Alright, what would you rate this? I'm gonna rate it 3 Pete Roses out of 5.
That's good. I like that. I don't know if I have a rating for this. I'm gonna give it a Rio Grande.
Nice. What a weird way to start a series. Yeah, that's all I just wanted to say. That's all I want to end with.
All right.
And next week when we talk about Enterprise, Enterprise, Voyager. I like this theme that we're going with, talking about beginnings and how these series are getting started, and this definitely is standout in the sense of how they're going to start. And I don't think this is a unique Trek. I'll give Ira Stephen Bear his due.
It is unique, I agree.
Moving on to Twitter and Stowe.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part, too.
This time we'll handle things without your help.
They're doing their part. Are you?
Sweet.
Nice
What do you
new
have for
intro.
us? Yeah, thank you.
All right. So I'm going to go over a couple of things here pretty quick, rather than one large thing. So just kind of going over Twitter over the past week, here's a couple notable tweets. So Armin, and I learned all of this from Twitter, Armin Shimmerman is playing Scrooge, as in Scrooge from the Christmas Carol in Vegas, December 3rd through the 14th. So that sounds interesting. I think Quark would make a good Scrooge. Not Quark from Emissary, but Quark overall from DS9. That actor would. Jerry Ryan took a selfie at the gym with her previous night's makeup still on, so there was that. Neat. Yeah, the inner workings of Twitter. Like, why do we care? Garrett Wong finally got followed back by Tim Russ, apparently after requesting 2 years ago.
Did he make a big deal about that?
Well, he posted a tweet and a picture that Tim Russ was following him and said that he's been trying to do that for 2 years. So
that is so Garrett Wong.
I don't know this because I've been following Garrett Wong and Tim Russ for 2 years. I know this because Garrett Wong posted this.
Nice.
So try to keep it short and sweet. So that's what I have this week.
I only got 3 words to say from mine. Stowe winter event. Okay, 4. Tomorrow. 10 o'clock Shaun's time. 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Pacific time. Log on. Tune in. Drop out. Some snowman stuff. Oh man, Shaun. Tomorrow's wasted for me. Just a wasted day. I already know. What have you been doing, Chris? Playing in the snow.
The Stowe snow?
The Stowe snow. Which is better than the real snow. Alright, moving on. Let's do a movie scene discussion.
Saddle up. Lock and load. Star Trek Insurrection is the #1 action movie in America.
Movie, people out!
The New York Times calls it seductively appealing.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes. It was fun.
Surprise, Sydney! Alright, I got it. That's like one of my favorite movies of all time. So for you today, I have I really love this scene. Probably my favorite scene from Star Trek 4. Little Scotty here for you.
I have noticed. Now just suppose, I were to show you a way to manufacture a wall that would do the same job, but be only 1 inch thick. Would that be worth something to you? Eh?
You're joking. Perhaps the professor could use your computer. Please.
Computer? Computer? Ah. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard? How quaint.
Transparent aluminum?
That's the ticket, laddie.
Oh, I love that scene so much. It's so great because he says how quaint with the computer, and if you think of the original bridge, like he has paper coming out of the out as a readout and knobs and stuff. I love that scene. It's so classic.
You see how fast he is on a QWERTY keyboard, though? Like,
it's insane, and he's just picking.
Yeah. That was a Mac. That was like a Mac 2 or whatever in the 80s.
How quaint.
No, that's a good scene. I absolutely agree with you. There's something to be said that Scotty is a little bit more of a jovial and a comic relief character in the movies than he was in the television show, but I think it worked.
Oh, yeah. I think it totally did.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. He's got his serious moments.
He fit like a glove into that role. That was a stretch. I love it. Okay. Yes.
No, I was just going to say, it's a good scene. That movie does have pretty good humor in it that's not too flat, and that's actually a really good part of it.
The highest grossing Star Trek film until JJ came around.
It had the highest... Oh, yeah, you're right. I just did the research for this. When I was talking about First Contact last week. So I thought First Contact ended up beating it out worldwide eventually.
Oh, did it? Oh, you might be right. Yeah.
I could be wrong. I don't know. I did the research last week, which means I don't remember it at all.
You can play more baseball. You'll remember everything then.
Oh, well, I got so bored watching Emissary, it made me forget things that I knew before.
Maybe that's what it is you watch DS9, you just forget there's Star Trek. Maybe that's the secret to being a fan of that show.
People like it so much, they just forgot that they watched better episodes before. For two people that really like Star Trek so much that we want to do a podcast about it, we're certainly having a bad time right now.
Bummer Bros. Okay. Man, I love it too.
We don't like DS9, sorry. We're not the only ones.
And it's really great too, because Scotty has to create like a special aluminum to work with. You notice to work with water. Like it's saying that the dynamics of the physics with dealing with metal and water and pressure and space and everything like that is combined into this scene, and it's completely lost on JJ.
You mean just putting a simple, cargo bay full of water? You got to build something special for it?
Yeah. It's very
otherwise
quaint.
Something's going to happen.
Yeah. Get water all over. You don't want a whale just floating around all over in there. That's not good. Vauxhall Community. Oh, that movie it's weird because I love that movie. However, you have to admit that movie's pretty campy. It's so weird of a movie.
That movie is campy. And actually, you know what, to say something serious, when you come back from, we were talking about how DS9's all over the spectrum, but when you come back from Star Trek 2, where Spock dies, and Star Trek 3, where you have to basically resurrect Spock, and Kirk loses his son, and you blow up the Enterprise, you need a campy movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, makes sense to me, at least. Also, another good example of that is after Best of Both Worlds, they air the episode Family.
Yeah, I mean, great sequel. There's a little drama in there.
Family's not too campy, but it's very light.
Well, they have the whole thing with the I don't know, like the hydroponics or whatever, like the weather system is failing on the farm.
Right.
That's kind of like a weird thing. Like they can't water their plants, essentially, is what it is.
On the farm. They're on a farm. That's the problem. The farm, they can't grow the berries for the wine. That's the conflict in that episode.
That is the conflict there. Well, you gotta be empathetic to Picard there. Like, you don't go home for like 10 years and then you show up, you're like, where's the wine? There isn't any. What?
Not gonna have the dinner wine. There's replicators. Who cares?
They needed to show the wine, like, in the episode, like, but it's like box wine. Carlo, big old jug of Carlo Rossi.
It's not conflict. The episode before, we thought Captain Forever. The following episode is the captain thinks that he's going to lose his family's wine forever.
Very concerned about the berries. See, that would have been really good. Like, here's the scene that needed to happen between Captain Picard and Sisko. Like, Sisko's like, I lost Jennifer that day. And then Picard's like, dude, I can't even begin to tell you how difficult it is to lose grapes. Perfect, like Oscar-winning performance right there. The grapes. Think of the grapes. Okay, all right, we gotta move on. What do we?
All right.
Oh yeah, we're going to. You guys, ever want to email us? Just send us this kind of. Say woohoo! And then put a message afterwards. We haven't had any emails this week. Why aren't people communicating with us, Shaun? It's like we're in a wormhole or something.
No,
hey,
we are in the celestial temple.
You can talk. You guys can talk to us about anything. We can talk about baseball if you want. Talk about grapes.
We can.
Talk about spaceships and water. Talk about whales. By the way,
we can talk about carpet.
Talk about carpet. There's two commentary tracks, I should say, that I highly suggest listening to, and that's First Contact and Star Trek 4, because the whole entire commentary track of Star Trek 4 is just Shatner talking about whales, and the commentary track of First Contact is just Jonathan Frakes talking about Jonathan Frakes and how great the movie is. Like, there's just silence, and then he's like, man, this movie's good. Okay, so yes. Email us, people. Email.
Yes, we're at thetrekbrothers@gmail.com.
Oh yeah, what are our communications here? We should let people know how to get a hold of us. Silly me. You can get our podcast off iTunes or SoundCloud. We're the Trek Brothers. You can email us at thetrekbrothers@gmail.com. We're also on thetrekbrothers.wordpress.com. On Twitter, we're at the Trek Brothers. I'm at Lethargic Nerd.
I'm at Shaun Makita.
Nice. So yes, now that you know how to get a hold of us, get a hold of us. Well, unlike Emissary, I think we've had fantastic starts to a great series. The series of the Trek Brothers. Is there anything else you want to say, Shaun? Man, this has been a great episode. I've had fun today.
I've had a lot of fun today, too. I feel like we've talked a lot. I felt like we've talked a lot of bad about Deep Space Nine.
There's some good. We know there's good. There's good out there.
Get the bad feelings out right now. Yeah. Don't worry. There's going to be bad episodes of every other Star Trek show, because there are definitely bad episodes of every other Star Trek show.
Yeah, there's this episode of Voyager where the Doctor shrunk it down and he's just on this chair. 2 feet tall. In the same breath, it's pretty weird, but in the same breath, I must add, there's an episode of DS9 where the damn ship's 2 inches tall, so.
Yeah, well, there's kind of a racist episode of Next Generation, so.
Luton, what weapon do you choose?
Yeah.
Tasha Yar is like one of my... Maybe I like underdogs, but I love Tasha Yar. She's just the hi-ya, wacha! And they needed that. She was the Jackie Chan of the show.
You got to be strong to escape rape gangs. So. She lives on a planet where rape gangs are a thing.
He needs to go to a planet where Stowe's the thing to do. Whoop, whoop, Earth. Stowe's the thing to do here. Alright, one last time. Q's Winter Wonderland. You people be out there. I'll be looking for you in wonderful Wreckland, Stoweland. I think this was a good episode, Sean.
I think it was a fun episode, at least.
We don't have fun like this all the time.
We don't, no.
It's a good way to bring out, huh? A good way to bow out.
It's a good way to, bring in the camp after all the seriousness.
All right, I'm going to peace out. Thank you for listening. I'm Chris Rivera, and I'll catch you next week.
Rock Lobster. I'm Shaun Makita. Bye.
So, what'd you think about that? What was your reaction after watching that episode, Sean?
One word.